Look, immigration is good for the United States. It's good for America. But it needs to be said that legal immigration is good for America. Illegal immigration is bad for America. And let me explain what I mean by that. First of all, it is true that immigration is good for America. It is good for us culturally. It is one of those things that differentiates us from most major democracies around the world. It is good for us in an entrepreneurial sense. It is good for us economically, and it is good for us financially, even at the government level, as long as you don't do something stupid like give away free checks, right?
Yeah.
Giving away free money is stupid on a couple of different levels. Number one, it is not an ethical proposition to take money away from people who are born in the United States or other immigrants who are already in the United States and forcibly, I might add, take money from them and then give it to other people, whoever those other people are. I don't like the idea of transferring money forcibly from one group of people to another, no matter who those groups are. But it also needs to be said, I believe, that you do not want to be in a position of creating some weird incentive system where you're attracting people from outside the United States to come here for the checks, right? Now,
Hmm.
we know that most people don't come to the United States for the free checks. They don't come in the United States for welfare. They come here for a lot of other reasons. But why would you want to try to set up an incentive structure to attract people who don't want to work? Like it's completely backwards. It's moronic. Moreover, I would go so far as to say this idea of telling people you can come to the United States but don't work, like you can't work for some period of time, that is completely bass backwards. I would be more comfortable with a policy that said, I'm going to call you in 6 weeks and make sure you have a job, right? We do not want to be recruiting lazy people. Most of the people that come to the United States are anything but lazy, but we certainly don't want to be in the position of recruiting people who don't want to work. Now, the other thing that needs to be said is that illegal immigration is not good for America, is not good for the United States. And that is true for a couple different reasons. One of the things that I learned most hard, most starkly, and most disturbingly at the border, I visited for a couple of days last year. I guess it was the year before last now. I was down at the Arizona-Mexico border. I met with CBP, with local sheriff's office, with ranchers, with property on the border, and with a number of libertarian thought leaders down there. And one of the things that I really came away having been affected by is learning about the huge problem that we have in human trafficking as a result of the black market created by our stupid federal government policy. Most people who come into the United States come in illegally. And most people who come illegally come using some form of human trafficker. On the other side, it's a gang, it's a coyote. And then in too many cases, they are in effect handed over to someone on the other side, on the American side of the border, using these, telephone-based apps. It is not someone you know. It is not someone that you can trust. It is someone to whom you owe a giant fee. And in all too many cases, this winds up in some form or another of indentured servitude. This is amazingly dangerous. The results are every bit as disgusting on both sides of the border as your imaginations will allow. And I am not going to go into the gory detail. You understand what I'm talking about. In fact, one of the problems that we have at the border is law enforcement officers don't want to stand down from chasing, which is so dangerous, right? Public policy in most communities today, as it was when I was a cop in South Florida, is that we only chase for violent felonies. And yet we do have a problem effectively controlling, especially young law enforcement officers who know damned well that if they don't interrupt the flow from the border to a life of indentured servitude, horrific things will happen to these people.
Yeah.
And asking a young law enforcement officer to stand down is a very difficult thing to achieve. So I think this is a horrific situation. I think that the government needs to get this under control. As a libertarian, I ask almost nothing of our government, especially our federal government. I wish the whole thing would go away, lock, stock, and barrel. But the one thing that we ask of the federal government is to do a better job of controlling our border and protect our civil liberties. And it has done an ultra crappy job at both of those things at the Mexican border. So the answer is, David, the public policy answer is that we need to do two things simultaneously. One is we need to get control of the border so as to discourage illegal immigration, which is so bad for the people coming in. By the way, when you bring people in who are not able to legally work, this is what leads to the abuse of these folks by employers, especially big companies, especially in agriculture, but in other ways too. This is what depresses our wage rate. When you have people who are forced into effectively into the shadows of the labor market, working for incredibly depressed wages, this is what undermines the wage structure for everybody. So this is not good for the labor market. It's not good for people who are born in the United States. It's not good for the immigrants. And we need to shut down human trafficking completely. So the first thing we need to do is dedicate. You're not going to hear me or any other libertarian say this too often. We need to redeploy the resources required to get a handle on and discourage illegal immigration. Now, on the legal side, I believe that we need to deploy the technology and the resources required to get this right, because we should be vetting people into the United States faster, not slower. One piece of discouraging illegal immigration is to getting legal immigration rolling, right? Part of the reason we have so much illegal immigration is because the legal immigration system sucks. It just doesn't work very well. This whole idea of, you know, it takes weeks, days, months, years to vet someone into the United States, that is utter unadulterated BS.
Yeah,
there is no reasonable way to argue it should take that long. Either you're on a list or you're not. If you're on a list of, you know, wanted fugitives, if there's a felony warrant in your home country, and I realize what I'm talking about fixing would require an interface with these nations' databases that we do not do a very good job of today. So we need to fix that. If you're on that list, okay, I get that. If you're on a list of, you know, known terrorists, and by the way, that's a whole nother discussion, as there's probably a lot of people on that list that shouldn't be. But okay, if you're on some list of people that we know are dangerous, that we should not be allowing to immigrate to the United States, then I get that. We should be not allowing those people in. But if you're not on a list, we should be vetting people in rapidly. And the objective, the goal should be able to be to do that, you know, in a day, right? Not in a year. And this whole idea of, you know, you're going to show up at a hearing later on, no incentive for anyone to show up at that hearing. It's completely dopey.